Hello everyone. Welcome to Urbanlogue, the knowledge series where we bring together ideas, stories, and people who are shaping the future of sustainable mobility in our cities. We believe that conversations can accelerate change, especially when it brings together experiences, vision, and the real-life challenges that it takes to transform this vision into tangible change on the ground. Today, I am excited and grateful to bring to you Shekhar Singh, IAS, the Commissioner of Pimpri Chinwad, with whom we've been working for the last 3 years, supporting him in various pioneering sustainable mobility interventions. Happy morning, sir.
Happy morning, Aswathy.
Thank you so much for taking the time for this conversation today.
Thank you.
So the last 3 years have been a really enriching experience for us working with you very closely. So today, but I'd like to start a little earlier on. We know that you're an IIT graduate. You've done your master's from Berkeley and you even had a job, I mean, you had a placement after your master's as well. What was that experience, that personal experience or moment when you felt that your calling was the Indian Administrative Services?
Since I was a kid, my dad always used to tell me, he's an engineer from IT Roorkee and he's an electronics engineer. So in a way that our Indian parents do in their right intentions, used to positively nudge me for engineering and electronics engineering. My grandfather used to nudge him for civil engineering because at 1980 civil engineering was the thing, electronics was not. But he chose not to do civil and chose electronics. And when he pushed me into electronics, I wanted to do civil.
Oh, wow.
And that also started when I was a small kid, watching like many of us Discovery and mega structures and extreme engineering on NGC and Discovery. I always used to feel that I need to be a structural engineer. That is, that thing in your mind. So that's when I entered IIT Guwahati, civil engineering. And then in my third year, I also went on an intern to Australia in Sydney, UNSW, that further piqued my interest, sort of making me think that I want to be a structural engineer for my life. And that's when I applied for masters in US for structural engineering, got through Berkeley and started doing my masters. It is when I reached Berkeley, which is, Berkeley is like the mecca of civil engineering in the world, and structural engineering in Berkeley is by far the best. There are other better universities otherwise, but Berkeley is by far the best in structural engineering. I realized that that's not my life calling. And I realized that I can't be, structural engineering is mostly on computer with softwares, etc., etc. And I realized that I can't be doing that for the rest of my life. One of the early push was also that I didn't really like it being in US. Life was good, quality of life is, everything is good, but I think I'm a very family guy, family person, friends and family and extended family and all. And I didn't really feel myself fitting into that entire ecosystem. Felt it a very formal ecosystem also because, once you go at the master stage, it becomes a little difficult otherwise as well. And that was like one push that, I need to go back to India. So it was a lot of a flux moment as to what to do, what not to do. One of the options which I was very seriously considering was in fact going to MIT for this very interesting cross-sectional course on urban planning and, structural engineering along with architecture. So it was a mixed course between School of Design, Architecture and Civil Engineering, a very good cross-sectional course. So that was one of the things that I was considering. But then I decided, no, I need to go back. I think because my father was in government service, there was always that overhang in my mind. Even though he asked me to write UPSC when I was in 4th year, I told him that I've written the exam, but I never wrote the exam in 4th year. So I just bluffed that I've given the exam, but I did not. Then I came back. It was also a bit of a flux. I was reading quite a lot. And I think something that I read about Mr. Sukumar Sen, who was the first Chief Election Commissioner in India, and how he conducted the first elections in India in 1951, when the whole world had doomed the country that, it's a country with about 20-22% literacy, maybe even lesser. And how can you give universal franchisee to everyone, including the women, for example? So 1920s, 30s, even Britain did not give, right to vote for women. In 1951, we took a huge, giant leap of faith. And the way that Mr. Sukumar Sen at that point of time really pushed the mantle, conducted the first elections in India when there was no SOP, no rules, nothing, and we could mobilize the whole country for that first election, really, got me peaked in thinking in terms of the nation building and the part of the nation building that I can be. And you can be part of nation building in multiple ways. You are a part of nation building, for example, in ITDP, and a teacher is, an engineer is. But I thought the greatest contribution that probably I could make is being in civil services, and also because it gives you a whole diverse range of things that you can work on. Some people say that's bad. I also say that's good, because you have always a generalist versus specialist debate going on, but you also need generalists who have the overall macro view of the whole thing. And I think it's been a good decision.
Yes, I'm very grateful that you made the decision. On that front, so, you spoke about how there are so many opportunities as an IAS official. Coming from a civil engineering background, did you have any sector that you felt like, I would really love to leave my mark in this sector?
I never wanted to box myself, being a civil engineer or structural engineer, into thinking that that should be a sector that I should be in, as you also mentioned, and that's a fact. From the very first assignment that we get as SDM, then to CO Zilla Parishad, the way that it goes in Maharashtra, you are working on various sectors. You're working on regulatory sector from a revenue point of view, disaster management, elections, etc. And you're also working in the social sectors, being in CO Zilla Parishad. It could be education, it could be health. Education is one thing that has been very close to me. I've been working almost on all assignments with some bit of up and down. That also is because of the realization that my father was the first person in our village to go out study in IT Roorkee. And I still remember his teacher called Goel Masterji, who was his maths teacher in class 8th, who really pushed him to go over and above his zone of comfort and reach to a place where you wouldn't really think at that point of time in 1978, 79 to be going out from our village in UP, and it was a biggish village, it was about 15,000 people, etc. So that always has been at the back of my mind, that how education could make him go from the village, and we belong to farming community. My grandfather, my father's elder brother still live in the village, they do farming, etc. My grandfather passed last year, of course. And that has always pushed me to think that education is one domain that I really need to work on. But with every changing domain, you start getting a different flavor. Gadchiroli was a really great experience in terms of how things are in left-wing extremist districts, and the various issues with regards to tribal communities, very, very basic bread and butter issues of roads and bridges not being there, connectivity not being there, mobile connectivity not being there, electrical connectivity not being there. Of course, Gadchiroli now has changed absolutely in the past 4 to 5 years, and the push that the government is now giving to Gadchiroli and development is absolutely great. But it was a very big shift from me going from Sindhudurg as CO Zilla Parishad to Gadchiroli. Satara was a completely different experience. I was working on agriculture, I was working on disaster management. Satara is very prone to landslides and all. I was also working on tourism. We worked on a big project on Koina backwater tourism from water transport point of view and water sports, etc. And then PCMC has been an absolute roller coaster ride. Working here right from mobility to health, to education, to public health, to urban planning, and to multiple other things. And I think if I look quick look at my past 12 to 13 years in the service, it's been about 13 years. I think my steepest learning curve has been absolutely in PCMC, where you're working from financial sector point of view, you're issuing municipal bonds and Bombay Stock Exchange, etc., which I never thought about that I'll be doing something like that. So I think it's been a great experience.
For all of these initiatives that you're involved in, we noticed that, one, you've been bringing multiple departments together for the implementation of these projects. You also engage very proactively with political leadership, with the media, as well as citizen groups. And finally, also collaborate with, technical agencies like us to ensure that there's innovation, etc. It does seem like urban leadership is quite overwhelming for the youth, the young graduates, etc., who are really looking to become an urban leader or an urban transformer in their own ways. What do you think is that one quality that they should bring on, and what do you think is that one thing that they should definitely drop?
So if one quality there has to be, it has to be the power to listen, the ability to listen, not power to listen, ability to listen. And that I'm saying why, because the urban areas in India are the most challenging in the world. primarily because our urban areas are growing exponentially. The kind of resources that we require to match up to that, exponential demand, we lack. There's no, problem in accepting that we lack. And the number of stakeholders that we have and the complexity of the problems that exist requires you to listen to a very, very wide cross section of people. It can be your citizens first and foremost. It has to be your media. It has to be your public representatives at all levels, whether it is the local level or the state level or the the federal or the government of India level. And it also requires engaging with various civil society organizations, development organizations like ITDP, for example, organizations which are working at the local level, and the ability to listen and have that feedback before you begin to think about a particular thing. So I think that is something very, very important. Collaboration is another key, which comes with, if you are able to listen and listen properly, you will have the intent to collaborate, because none of us have the perfect solutions. None of us really, have a absolute solution to anything. It has to be contextualized. Every city have their own issues. Every city have their own problems. Even when we are trying to take some best practices from across the globe or across the country, you always need to think about what is best for me. And that's why I think collaboration is the key. We need to collaborate very, very effectively across the board, and that has been one of my intents, that I've been able to collaborate with multiple organizations in, say, mobility, for example. We are collaborating with almost about 4 to 5 organizations in education, for example, similarly in health, similarly in urban planning, similarly in river rejuvenation projects, for example. So I think what I've seen in urban areas, collaborations become one of the key factors. And also how you can mobilize resources from various channels, because no matter what, you are always short of resources, and goes without saying. You could be sitting in PCMC, which is supposed to be a better off in financial resources, etc. But PCMC is growing at an absolute exponential scale. We were 17 lakh in 2011. We are currently anywhere from 30 to 32 lakh. And that's like a huge jump for any city to cope up, create infra. Climate change is a big issue. It's been raining continuously for the past 1 week. Monsoon has come 8 days earlier in India, and about 12-13 days early in Pune. And the kind of rainfalls that we are experiencing, just 2 days back, Baramati, Indapur received entire year's rainfall in a single day.
Wow, okay.
And similar episodes are happening throughout the city. So how do you cope up with all this entire change, which is a very, very massive change? I think these are the kind of questions. And lastly, I think technology. Any urban leader wanting to come has to be very, very abreast about the latest technology, because according to me, technology not just helps us leapfrog, it is also one of those things which is very, very, agnostic towards, a citizen could be, technology does not discriminate, based on gender, based on class, based on caste, based on region, geography, etc., etc. If it's a computer application, it's a computer application. Computer application will not favor someone over the other, etc. So I think, and for example, our Honorable CM has been really pushing for technology to be used specifically in urban areas. He's given us very, very broad mandates on how to improve on services, and not just deliver services, but really go into what we have begun to call as government process reengineering, trying to use the technology for the betterment, going back to the drawing board and seeing all the processes once again where we can bring in more efficiency. So I think these are the few things.
Is there something that you think that they should not do?
In urban areas?
In urban leadership.
In urban leadership, I think they should not assume that they are the know-alls. They should not assume that one of the issues in general in government and bureaucracy sometimes happens is there is a bhuto no bhavishyanti syndrome, which says that you're the best one that has arrived at the place. I think one thing that you should very much do and drop, it's the same thing, is to continue what your predecessors have done. And something which is very, very non-glamorous, everyone wants to do their own thing. But urban leaders, because urban areas, the gestation period of projects, Aswathy, is 3, 4, 5 years. They don't happen in a year or 2 years. That's why don't think that you are doing something in isolation. Just look at what your predecessor did, what was good that started, and please continue that. And that becomes very critical. We went to Germany last year, and I was surprised that the mayors in Germany have an 8-year tenure. because they say that
no wonder the cities are great.
and that has its own pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that I would really urge the urban leaders is to continue the good that their predecessor did. It's non-glamorous and glamorous both. But it will give you that satisfaction of having completed something with the city, and for that reason PCMC is a very great organization. I think successively commissioners have decided to continue what has been going on. Sarthi, for example, Shekhar Singh started, and we are still continuing Sarthi, and in fact we are innovating on it one step at a time.
I couldn't agree with you more on this front, especially being on the other side, working with PCMC as well from the time when the Rainbow BRT was initially set up, and to see that even today you're having these conversations of how this particular infrastructure can be improved for its citizens. So I really can't agree with you more. So over these last 3 years, what are, like, let's say 3 projects that you're really proud of where they've reached today?
Overall, you mean, or only
on sustainable mobility? I'm so sorry.
So mobility, I think one project that I'm really proud of having delivered and started is Harit Setu. It has to be Harit Setu, no doubt about it. And that is one of the projects that, in fact, conceptualization started in Hadikar sir's time, and Rajesh Patil sir continued it, and I continued it further. But that took time. That took time for stakeholder consultation. That took time for collection of data, etc. And that's how projects should be, right? You can't imagine that you will be able to cook up a project in a month or 2 and then implement it. So I think Harit Setu implementation as far as mobility is concerned is something that I'm really proud of. I'm also happy with the way that we've looked at the traffic intersection redesigning, which we took about 6 to 7 months back, and we could push 10 of those intersections during the 100 days program of Honorable CM. And we could see a major reduction in the waiting times at those traffic junctions. So 10 of them have already happened, 15 further we are going to do. And we analyzed about 70 to 80 of these junctions in the city. We took data from Google Maps and TomTom and tried to see which are the top junctions where citizens are facing the congestion issues, and also ran those junctions through with the police department, with the RTO, and also with the citizens. And then we selected 25 top junctions where we need to do the interventions. Now, you as a sustainable mobility advocate might say that that is a band-aid, but even that band-aid is important for the city. As we are moving forward towards sustainable mobility and other things, we also need to set in place systems which will give immediate relief, which is now. Along with it, I think one thing that I've been happy in terms of a shift that I've seen is increased acceptability of cross sections of society towards projects of sustainable mobility. So the whole clamor for urban streetscaping projects being a beautification project has reduced to an extent, has not totally vanished, but has reduced to an extent. So the functionality part of it, I often keep telling my people that we become very happy trying to implement an urban streetscaping project, but the real success is going to be a day when it becomes as boring as the bitumen on the road. So bitumen on the road enthuses no one, because it's road at the end of the day. You've been seeing it day in and day out. That's how a footpath or a cycle track has to be. It should become as boring as road. And that is when the real success has come, because then you're not thinking, right? You are implementing based on a particular street design, etc. And that kind of the intent that we've been able to bring in across cross sections. We have public representatives asking for these projects now, not across the board, but still we have an increasing number of those people who are saying that we need these projects in our areas, in our wards. And I think that's a huge win. We have some media people who have begun to realize the importance of these projects. Again, not across the board, but the number is increasing. The traffic police department, for example, have begun to see the importance of these projects, where the whole debate about reducing the width of the road for cycle tracks is slowly, gradually reducing to an extent. Has not vanished yet, but I think we've been successful in beginning that shift. I think we need to keep hitting for the next some years across cross sections of stakeholders to do that. And just one final point is with regards to the use of data that we've been able to bring in this entire domain. Because people ask, what are you making the cycle tracks for? Who are the people who are cycling? Who are the people who are traveling? So for example, the kind of data study that we did with you, which proved the number of trips that are happening in the city, how many walking, how many cycling, etc. people who are walking and cycling, what is critical for them. For example, the recent survey that we conducted along with you, I think one of the majority things that, the people who walk say that why they don't take a decision to walk is navigating an intersection, for example. And that's why that also proved in my mind, which is very intuitive, but it also backed that with the data that intersection design has to become a very critical part of the entire mobility ecosystem that we're trying to put in place. And that's why these 25 intersections, not just from traffic congestion point of view, but also from pedestrian safety point of view, was very, very critical.
Sure.
And I think apart from that, you could say On Draveth Road got completed during my 3 years, and I'm really proud of the way that On Draveth Road has come up. So I think.
So, in your conversation right now, you're talking about how, there has been resistance, and that resistance is reduced from multiple, stakeholders. What do you think is that factor that helped you in, of course, the resistance hasn't disappeared, but what has helped you in reducing that resistance? Like whether it's media or citizens or...
Aswathy, it's dialogue. So we conducted, for example, we've conducted almost about 2 to 3 workshops till now. First workshop I remember, we conducted a workshop about 3 hours, trying to tell them the importance of, creating these safe spaces for people to walk, people to cycle, for children, for senior citizens, for anyone, for a leisure walker, for a health walker, for a person going for his job. And the next day, a lot of the media guys again published about beautification, again published about all that.
Okay.
But we never stopped the dialogue. We had another workshop with them. Similarly, for police department, we've had heated debates to begin with regards to, police department feeling a certain thing, and they're not wrong, because they are facing that, standing on that traffic intersection. They face the commuters, they face the traffic congestion, so they have their own view. But that's not necessarily the whole worldview. Similarly, like I have an engineering worldview with regards to how an intersection should be designed based on research, based on data, etc. But that might not be the total worldview. So we need to bring these two together. And I think dialogue has been one critical part that we've been able to do that. But I again believe that the job is absolutely not done. This will have to go on. I remember a conference that we both were there in Delhi and UMI, and we had a delegation from Netherlands, and I was just talking to them, and they said that don't think that we achieved it suddenly. The entire success that you see now, we've been carrying that since 1990, if I'm not wrong. And they said we took 20 long years to convince. So that's a part of any society, for example. Because it's very counterintuitive. What is intuitive is you increase the road space so that the cars get more road space. But often, we know this, so we realize, but most people otherwise who are sitting in the cars believe that road widening is the solution for all. That's not the case. That whole entire law of traffic congestion, the wider the road is, the more cars are going to come. So it's very counterintuitive, but it's very important for people, administrators like us, for people like you, to keep hitting on to that point, unless and until we see that shift in the society.
Sure. Coming back to the Harit Setu project that you said that you were really proud of, multiple cities across the country are creating these corridors, like the On Draveth one that they're transforming. But Harit Setu is really looking at making neighborhoods entirely walking and cycling friendly, and then like scaling up across the city through all the neighborhoods as well. What actually sparked that thought, and how have you taken that journey ahead?
I think when the project started, one of the early aims of Harit Setu was the very fact that the name is Harit Setu, was connecting the various greens in the city. And through a continuous channel, where people can safely walk, cycle, etc. Also at the same time connect the blues, which is the, the riverfronts, the lakes, etc., etc. And then over the time, it also evolved into a project where we began to realize that the islands of arterial roads being made pedestrian friendly or cycle friendly will not push people to come out of their homes and start cycling, because a person has to be very sure about the safety, about the convenience from your home up till the destination that you're wanting to reach. Early on, I think even my predecessors, and that was the whole philosophy of this project, as you also mentioned, that you need to saturate neighborhoods by neighborhood. If you have to, push people towards particular direction, or using their feet to cycle or to walk, etc. They need to feel safe. They need to feel safe for their kids. They need to feel safe for the parents. They need to feel safe for themselves while they are going out. And that is the whole concept behind Harit Setu, that you take a whole neighborhood, you saturate it completely, make it absolutely safe for pedestrians and for cyclists, to ensure that any movement that happens in that neighborhood, something that can be done on foot, on cycle, people prefer that over a car. A very small example, right? When I was small, I used to go to hair salon walking.
Okay.
By the time I was in 12th and my college, I started to take my car
to the same place.
Oh, wow. And that's happening with, all of us. That's happening with all of us when we go for groceries. That's happening. And there's a whole health issue also related to it, sometimes which we forget to push on to that. A lot of people say that, that's all very good. All this entire thing is very good for European countries where the weather is good and you can walk, etc., etc. And that's why very, very small things like, shade on your pedestrian walkways becomes very, very critical. And that is what the entire thing. So even in Harit Setu, we are looking very closely at the shade that is available. So we did a recent study where we were trying to map the shaded areas in our Harit Setu streets. There are about 10 to 12 streets that we mapped in the Harit Setu Nigdi Pradhikaran area. And we were surprised that in an area which we really think is so green, Nigdi Pradhikaran is amongst the greenest areas, we have road stretches we are only 40% shaded. There are road stretches, of course, which are 70% shaded as well. So we realized that the horticulture landscaping part with the tree plantation becomes a very critical part of the whole strategy. So it's not just creating a walkway, it's creating a shaded walkway which pushes a person, which encourages a person to walk even when the sun is high and up in the sky.
And so like in Chennai, we were just doing the study of temperature under the shade and outside, and we noticed there was a 10 degrees difference at 12 o'clock.
Absolutely.
So then, I mean, we can actually have cooler cities just by having these shaded walkways. So that's great. So now just moving into buses. Often city leaders, especially commissioners, because public transportation is something that is, it's mostly run by the state transport undertakings. They don't necessarily include that as as a comprehensive urban mobility solution that they need to be sort of championing or pioneering. But at PCMC, you've been at the forefront of ensuring that the number of buses in the city are increased so that people can actually travel more comfortably. You've also been ensuring that, every action is taken that people are able to travel fast in buses by strengthening the BRT as well. Today, so when, like you said, when there is so much of interest in car-centric infrastructure, how is it that you've been able to get the focus back into buses, and what would be your advice to people who are, attempting to make similar changes in their own cities?
So Aswathy, I've been also reading a lot in the past 2-3 years, not just the reports by organizations like ITDP and WRI and other things, but also, and just as a digression, I would really urge your readers to read The Triumph of the City by Edward Gloucester. I think it's an amazing book which breaks a lot of counterintuitive silos in your mind as to what is the actual solution of a problem. For example, if you ask people in general, most people would say we want metros, right? And many of the administrators, like me even, a lot of the public representatives would really feel metro is important, which it is. Metro is really important for example, PCMC to Pune connectivity. The kind of connectivity that we'll have from Nigdi right up till Katraj is amazing, because that's a huge distance and you'd require metro for that. But one thing that we've fallen into a pitfall is considering that metro is what we all just need. When I started to look at the data in our city as well, it was, of course, metro is taking baby steps in Pune. The network is yet to develop. The network effect is the most important thing in pulling people into metro networks throughout the world. That's, based on research and data from across, including my own experience from Delhi. Delhi is my home city to that thing. I began to realize that 12.5 lakh people daily travel in buses. And a lot of times we are ready to invest thousands of crores in metro, which is very, very critical, very required, but not even 1/10 of that money in buses. And one of the reasons why Pune is running the same number of buses for the past almost a decade as we were running earlier, whereas the population has tripled. There have been multiple efforts that have been made, and now very sure-footed, firm steps are being taken to change that whole story. But it was my firm belief that people need to really have that access, and I think one of the things that really pushed me, must appreciate ITDP also for that, is the person near transit study. You know, these data sets are very, very critical and very powerful, you know, where you had 96% of the people living within 200 meters or 500 meters of a bus stop, 500 meters of a bus stop, but then that drastically reduces to 60% when you look at the fast transit. Now, if a person sitting somewhere in the corner of the city is making a decision of whether to take his vehicle or a public transport to reach some part of Pune, he does not want just a bus which would come in 2, 3, 4 hours. He wants a bus which would come in half an hour frequency, for example, a 15-minute frequency, so that he can take a decision whether he wants to go to that place through bus or not. Similarly, I think convenience. So e-buses, for example, I would really say that has taken the notch of convenience very, very high, where people now have a very comfortable ride. So I think all these experiences, and also looking at the huge impact that the BRTS has on this. We had a very, and we keep having these debates, right? Pune decided to remove the last BRTS section, the Sangamwadi section of late, and there was a lot of discussion in the city whether PCMC would also do that. And I made my stand absolutely clear. We are only going to increase the BRTS length. We are not going to decrease the BRTS length, but we need to put in much more efforts to increase the frequency. Because even though we might have BRTS, one very important critical observation in the city is in the sections of BRTS where the frequency is very high, the ingress of private vehicles into the BRTS is very, very low. In the sections where frequency is low, the ingress of the private vehicles is very high. So that is why we thought the need to push the number of buses into not just BRTS, but also what we all often keep saying as the last mile connectivity for the metro as well, which would really push not just the convenience of the people, but also metro ridership, also the convenience that people would have in terms of thing. So the BRTS data that I was telling you that we released last week was very interesting. Out of the 12.5 lakh people that travel in the whole Pune region in buses, 2.5 lakh travel in the BRTS and PCMC. So that's like a huge push for BRTS. Almost 20 to 22% people are actually traveling in the 6 BRTS routes that PCMC is running. So 2.5 lakh people are saying don't remove the BRTS.
So that's awesome. I mean, having this kind of data can be very powerful even when there is pushback. So another point that you made early on is about resources. You know, like you were speaking about how cities are growing at an exponential pace and that you really need to look at resources for them. Now, PCMC has taken up some innovative measures on that front. Could you share a part of your journey on that front?
So, as far as financial resources are concerned, I would say we have been fortunate enough to have a good, financial health of the municipal corporation, and that is one of the reasons I would appreciate a city with not so good financial health considering this as a very difficult option. Probably being in PCMC, that has been a little bit of an easier option for us because the financial resources have been better than other places. As I said, it is even less for PCMC also. But we also decided that, for example, Harit Setu Project, we need to implement it very, very fast. We can't wait for the budget allocations to keep happening every year, some bit, and it continuing for 4 or 5 years. And one of the ways that you can have a very quick project implementation is, for example, dip into municipal bonds. So we are issuing a green bond. Even in fact, coincidentally, just next week we are coming out with a green bond which is backing the Harit Setu. It's a 200 crore green bond which we are listing on Bombay Stock Exchange. And we thought that also is very critical because the government of India is giving incentive, so that works out very well. We are also pitching this project for the Urban Challenge Fund to Government of India in the creative reimagination of the cities as growth hub category. But it also pushes us in terms of dipping into a funding which will be exclusively for that project. So once the green bond is issued, I'll have 200 crore exclusively for Harit Setu, so that the budget allocation is not a problem for the project implementation, and that becomes sometimes very critical. And if I look at the Harit Setu master plan, the neighborhood concept that I said, we've selected 12 neighborhoods that we have to implement in the next 10 to 12 years. And that's going to be a tall order, right? 150 to 170 crore every neighborhood. And I think the further neighborhoods that we are analyzing are even a little bit on a higher side, is going to require a lot of commitment from not just the city administration, but also city public representatives. And we need to dip into every funding that's available, right from probably a debt instrument going further through multilateral banks or green bonds or sustainability linked finance from multilateral agencies.
So on that front, another piece that you're speaking about the annual budgets, and often cities have policies, and they have like in the case of Harit Setu, where you have a vision for the next 10 years, and then there are annual budgets and there are budgetary allocations that are made. PCMC is one of those few organizations that is working with organizations like us to analyze these budgets to see if your budget is in alignment with your policy goals. And you've been making these changes where now you're even investing more than 50%. You've added another 50% into sustainable mobility investments itself. So do you think these kind of analysis is something that's lacking in other cities, and is that something that you would encourage other cities to engage in? What are your thoughts?
Aswathy, the first and foremost thing is having a robust ecosystem with regards to that, because even if before you begin to think about budget allocations, the ecosystem that is available for sustainable mobility in a city needs to push the whole system towards those budget allocations. There's no doubt that budget allocations are very critical, and the kind of data analysis that we've been able to do with you has also pushed us towards a better this thing. And I think absolutely other cities also need to break that down. Because, for example, when you think about mobility, one of the early learnings from the analysis that you did with us was that road is mobility, but road does not necessarily lead to sustainable mobility. So unless and until you are creating roads which have walkways and pathways, it's just a road, which is good, which is required for the mobility of the vehicles, but not good enough for pedestrians and not good enough for cyclists, for example. And those early learnings were important to segregate our budgeting also into absolutely what you could call sustainable mobility and not so sustainable mobility. And now both are important. If you look at a growing city like PCMC, it's anyone's case that the new growing areas need to have more roads, need to have more connectivity. But we've also taken a decision that if I have the choice to make just a road of 2 kilometers versus a road of 1 kilometer with pedestrian walkways, we'll go with 1 kilometer with pedestrian walkways. So we might take a little longer to reach up to 2 kilometers, but it does not make sense to have a simple road and then forget about the walkway, pathway, and then think about it some 5-10 years down the line. So we have taken that call. And this has also been possible as the ecosystem that I was talking about initially, because of the whole ecosystem which is working very, very well. For example, we have someone like Mr. Prasanna Desai, who's been our in-house architect, so to say, pushing this entire project from a design point of view, from a scientific research point of view, and very, very small things, right? When you and we've learned as a city as well, what we were doing in the mobility projects very early on to what we are doing in Harit Setu. I think we have evolved quite a bit. And other cities have also been following that lead, taking that lead. Then ITDP, for example, who's helping us with the entire data analysis, the other things. We have someone like, say, Ashik Jain, for example, helping us out, other organizations. So all of this ecosystem has come together along with their public representatives to create that buoyancy that today I can allocate 50% of my civil budget for sustainable mobility. I can take that leap of faith. So until and unless you have that robustness, that buoyancy in the ecosystem directed towards this particular thing, I think even budget analysis would not do much. But budget analysis is one very critical part.
In all of your conversations, you've been talking about the long-term nature. I mean, of course, there are immediate, like the intersection-related sort of projects that are needed, but also the longer-term projects as well. And you said about how PCMC has been very lucky in the fact that projects have continued. What do you think is the secret in PCMC where these projects have continued? How did that happen? Like, what are the systems, or what is the reason behind these projects actually continuing? Multiple commissioners. So it's not just your period that you've taken up, but multiple others have also. So what is that?
I think in one word, it's team building. Collaboration, you could say it. And the strength of the internal PCMC engineering team. So, for example, the champions like Mr. Bapu Gaikwad, Mr. Sunil Pawar, earlier Mr. Savne, Mr. Nikam to an extent, Mr. Ombase to an extent, this entire engineering domain that exists in PCMC are very well attuned towards thinking from this direction. Otherwise, a lot of times in other organizations that I've seen, the engineering departments are not able to think beyond road, gutters and drains. But our own core team here, for example, my joint city engineer mobility now, and that has been one big institutional change that we've been able to bring in, that we now have a mobility department in place. And mobility department with the joint city engineer is looking at all these entire issues, is looking at sustainable mobility, is looking at BRTS, is looking at traffic congestion, is looking at traffic simulation, is looking at how to optimize traffic lights, etc., etc., etc. Once you have this very, very strong team, plus the collaboration that we have with multiple people, whether it's Prasanna Desai Architects, whether it is Pratap Bhosle as a traffic expert, whether it's Street Search, Saurabh Kasturia from a traffic expert point of view, Ashik is there, ITDP is there, and now with Harit Setu coming in, Bloomberg Philanthropies is also coming, GDI is also coming. So all this has created a very, very robust ecosystem, which I was just also referring earlier, which has, really pushed this mandate beyond commissioners. And in fact, I would say commissioners get educated through this entire ecosystem. Frankly speaking, I was not very attuned to sustainable mobility before I joined PCMC. I used to always appreciate the New Delhi walkways that we have, and that has been one of my very good memories, walking around India Gate and Khan Market and Chanakyapuri, etc. in Delhi, or CP, for example. You would always appreciate that from a walker point of view, but never from an administrator point of view. So I myself have been educated by this ecosystem, helping me come up to speed in these entire concepts. And I think Pune in general has a very robust ecosystem, right from your JM Road and people like Parisar, and Mr. Gadgil and Pranjali and lot of other people. So it's a very, very robust ecosystem, which has now been co-opted by PCMC. And I would say PCMC is in many ways doing a better job than other cities for now. But I think one word, core team of various collaborators backed by our own internal team from PCMC, which is very, very progressive.
And so you mentioned, so much about dialogue, right? Like both with this ecosystem that you are speaking about, but also with political leadership, citizens, etc. Now, was there a time when you were working on a project that there was a feedback from one of these stakeholders that completely changed the way that you were thinking about the project? Often, so like, even as urban transformers, you sometimes are so tied to your idea. But this whole point that you mentioned about listening, was there something that you can give us as an example that shaped the way you thought about a project?
So, Harit Setu, there are multiple examples. We began with a very, very normative or idealistic design. Because the whole concept was that you need to ensure the safety of the cyclists and pedestrians. But we also did realize that to reach a perfect solution, we still need some bit more maturity. So based on the feedback, we made few changes in the design, which were quite a bit opposed by the team from GDI and the team from Bloomberg Philanthropies. But that is a very interesting negotiation with some citizens pushing back for some bit relaxation, with the organizations like GDI and Bloomberg Philanthropies pushing the other way, and probably administration being in between, trying to think about both the voices and trying to find a solution which is a negotiated good solution both for the pedestrian walkways also and also for the people traveling in the cars, because you can't totally be oblivious of the concerns of the other side as well. The second example is the safe school zone. So safe school zone is also something good that we are doing in Harit Setu. We have about 18 schools and institutions in Harit Setu area, and we are trying to ensure that we have safe school zones, because accidents of school kids is a very, very grave issue that we as a city are also facing, as a district and as a country. We implemented one solution in Nigdi Pradhikaran at Nyan Prabodhini School. Was opposed quite a lot by the residents. So we also realized that probably we need to make some changes. So we went back to the drawing board, and now we've come up with another option which is much more acceptable to the people, but is also true to the end aims that we want to take. So all this dialogue is very critical for us also to keep improving as we implement the project, and that is something very different about the kind of project that we are doing. And that's why, involvement of the architects in this become very important. More often than not, government systems are attuned to take a design from the architect and then you forget the architect. The project management consultant does his own job. But you can't do that in this thing. The architect, Mr. Prasanna Desai, who has worked on Harit Setu, it's not that he created designs and then the contractor is, implementing those designs. At every step, you're having to navigate very, very small things. One small example, we created the whole template for Harit Setu. We started implementing. Very soon, we realized that because of the trees, and Nigdi Pradhikaran is known for its trees, we decided very early on we are not going to touch any of the trees. Right, except for one, two very, very critical places. We decided to retain all the trees. Now, retaining all the trees meant a total redesign in their entirety. And that's why involvement of your architect while the project is ongoing becomes very critical. And that is why Mr. Prasanna Desai and his team has been involved with every single day of implementation. There's not even a day when they are not involved. So, and this is not how typical projects run. Generally, once the architect has done his job, architect forgets about it. Project management consultant tries to implement what architect is given. But these are the kind of projects where you have to navigate with each and every household. There are issues with, people saying that I don't have a ramp. My drainage is not getting connected properly. So you're having to navigate with each and every bungalow owner in Nigdi Pradhikaran so that their concerns are taken care of. And then you include those into the design while not compromising on the original focus on pedestrians and on cyclists. And that becomes something very, very critical that we've been able to plug in this project of Harit Setu.
So there are also multiple of these bold moves, if I may say so, that you take, like in terms of, rolling out parking management, or if it is like the whole exploration around low emission zones. What has been your experience in these kind of innovative tools? Because often, even when we speak to other cities are looking for others to have potentially tried and tested, because they're kind of worried about their own journeys, trying to trying to explore this. What has been your experience in sort of these kind of new age solutions?
Frankly, Aswathy, I would have wanted myself to be bolder as far as parking is concerned. That is one area that I do feel I could not really hit the bullet through the target. We've off late started doing that, and before my tenure ends, I do intend to place some bit of a system as far as on-street parking is concerned. So one of the things that often we as administrators or as bureaucrats are often worried about is a public pushback. I am of the very firm opinion that once you take decisions, there would be a public pushback. You will need to negotiate. You should have the clarity of taking a step back. You cannot be egoistic about a particular step. That once I've started something, I will do it. No. At the end of the day, you're doing it for the people. And if I'm not able to convince the people, either I'm not communicating properly, or maybe there is a problem in what I'm doing. So I should have the agility, I should have the understanding to be ready to take a back step. And I've always tried to more or less maintain that agility. And that's why I'm not worried too much before taking a deep dive. Because then you always have that option of, probably going back to the drawing board, or probably wanting to also decide that, no, this is something that city requires, but does not need right now. Something that people might be ready or might be mature enough in some years to come. And that's also part of learning. And I think that's very important to realize, not every reform ecosystem is ready to digest immediately. There are a lot of reforms that, earlier people used to push them off, and now people are realizing. So, cycling, walking is one of them. Throughout the world, it's happening. Paris, for example, did a great job. I was fortunate enough to have recently visited that place and tried to see myself the entire change that they've tried to bring in over the past 7 to 8 years. It was not easy. It was not easy for the lady mayor, I'm forgetting the name. It was not easy for her to implement. There was a lot of pushback. But she went on to it, negotiated, tried to take some step back, but still keep moving in the general forward direction. And I think we all need to have that agility to accept that at the end of the day, you're doing it for people. But sometimes the system is not mature enough to understand. So you negotiate, you do some things, you don't do some things, and you keep some things for later on.
Let's now move ahead. It's 2040. You're here in Pimpri Chinwad with your family. You are traveling in the city. And if you took this one photograph of the city, what would that photograph capture?
Okay. I don't know if I can say one photograph.
Sure.
But one thing that I would really want to do when I come back is probably walk along the banks of any of the three rivers.
Okay.
And hopefully all the three rivers would be clean by then.
Okay.
We'll have amazing walkway and a cycle track by the side of the river, which I would be able to enjoy with my family. And Harit Setu would have been implemented in, you said 2040, so I'm assuming at least 10 to 12 neighborhoods by then. And I could get on not just walking, but onto a cycle as well with the family. Go to a lot of green spaces, the kind of green spaces that we are creating now and would want to create further as well, with a good AQI. Pollution not being there so much, and traffic congestion hopefully not reaching the levels that we see in other parts of the country, which PCMC still does not have, but might begin to have further. So I hopefully by 2040 that will not be the case.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cities don't change overnight, but they do change when champions like Shekhar Singh, sir, follow a vision, roll up his sleeves, and really keep pushing for this change to happen across the years. Thank you for joining us on Urbanlogue, and we hope that these stories will inspire you and maybe even nudge you to write your own chapter in shaping the urban mobility transformation in Indian cities. Thank you. Until next time.